Lights out and away they go. Lewis Hamilton takes... Got a little carried away there, but a man can dream. Welcome to the Aussie GP week, episode 52 of the Hard or Soft HOS F1 podcast. As you can see, I am flying solo this week. Felt like a bucket hat week, so I'm rocking the bucket hat. Just me. Adrian had we were supposed to record last night, but Adrian just started a new job. He had some stuff going on with that, and he had some family stuff come up. So for the sake of getting this out in time, we both decided it would be best if I just record by myself. And who knows, maybe Adrian will put in a little 5-minute segment with his predictions for this weekend. Who knows? Nice little surprise for you guys listening. I also want to mention, since we were supposed to record last night, I want to make sure I get credit for this. Last week, as we discussed, I got on the wheel as punishment for Checo winning the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. I had to spin the wheel, and my punishment was eating Checo's favorite food, which turns out to be Japanese food. So we went back and forth on what that should be, and what we landed on was all I can eat for a day is ramen. So yesterday, I was a ramen boy, and I ate a lot of ramen. So all day, just all I ate was ramen. So I do want to note that the punishment was done. So yes, welcome to the HOS F1 podcast. My name is Adrian. Got a lot to talk about in terms of F1, some news stuff, some kind of gossipy, rumory stuff, and then of course some predictions, bets, all that good stuff for this weekend's race. One of the best weeks in terms of maybe not on track action, but off track is always a lot of entertaining stuff. For one, we've got Danny Rick back in the paddock with Red Bull doing some videos, and just his general presence being around is very nice. He's a very cheery fella, so looking forward to that. Hopefully he gets himself on the broadcast a little bit and kind of hear a little more from him. So yeah, exciting week. Before I get into the F1 talk, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention today is opening day in Major League Baseball. And Adrian and I are both pretty big baseball fans. I'm like a stone's throw away from the Toronto Blue Jays Stadium. So I'm obviously a big Jays fan. He's a big Braves fan. And they actually play each other this year, May 12th to 14th. And that's right after we go to the Miami Grand Prix. So I don't know if Adrian wants to make the trek down here to fulfill his obligation from losing the F1 League last year. But that remains to be seen. We'll have to leave that up to Adrian. But the two teams play each other this year, so that'll be interesting. We're not going to be, this isn't a big baseball talk podcast, just topical right now. I will mention that in a few weeks when the NHL playoffs start, I will be mentioning the Toronto Maple Leafs quite a bit. But as I take a sip out of my Maple Leafs mug, for those listening, if history is any indicator, it'll be a short playoff run. But I've got hope, I've got faith that this is going to be the year. But I'm not going to spend too much time on that because people aren't here to listen to hockey talk or baseball talk. They're here to talk about wheel. So let's talk some wheel. I'm going to start with the weekly F1 quiz, and I'm going to run through it real quick. And by default, I win this week because no Adrian. So by default, I'm already up one. So let me just sign in here. Another Mercedes t-shirt, throw in the mix. All right. This week in F1, 10 quiz questions on the latest F1 news ahead of the Australian Grand Prix. All right. Question 1. Which team let go of technical director James Key this week as part of a restructure? McLaren, Haas, Williams, Alfa Romeo. McLaren. Bang. True or false? Charles Leclerc's last victory came at the 2022 Australian Grand Prix. I think he won like Austria last year. So false. Bang. True for 2. How many times was the safety car deployed in last year's Australian Grand Prix? So I know Sainz spun out on the first lap, so I'm going to say 1. And then I think Verstappen DNF'd. I'm going to say 2. Question 4. Which team recently said they do not believe they can accommodate Lewis Hamilton in the driver lineup for the 2024 season? Oh, that was Christian Horner. of Red Bull. Asshole. Sorry. Which team principal urged his team? Oh, that was right. Which team principal urged his team to, quote, stay calm after difficult first 2 races of the season? Sounds like, so Toto Wolff, Otmar, wish Adrian were here to help me out with this one. Otmar Schaffnauer, Frederick Vasseur, or Andrea Stella. I'm going to say it was Ferrari, Frederick Vasseur. Correctomando. That is 5 for 5 for those counting at home. Pedro de la Rosa said he realized Fernando Alonso was, quote, different from other drivers at which race? 01 Spanish Grand Prix, 01 British Grand Prix, 03 Hungarian Grand Prix, 02 Spanish Grand Prix. I'm going to guess it's one of the Spanish Grand Prix because that's his home race. And let's just pick the earliest one, 01 Spanish Grand Prix. So, buzzing. Which driver described the Australian Grand Prix as, quote, almost a home race? I think Bottas. I saw something on Instagram about a new helmet. Let's go. There it is. There's the picture I saw. 2019 Australian Grand Prix winner Valtteri Bottas loves racing in Melbourne. Maybe it's close to Finland. I don't know. That doesn't make sense. Anyways, Fernando Alonso has 2 podiums in his first 2 races with Aston Martin, and he compared the team's leap up the order this year to that of which championship winning outfit? Red Bull, Renault, Brabham, or Braun? I don't know Brabham. I'm gonna have to look into that. I'm gonna guess Braun. Another one. Oh, just cruising. I know wheel. Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, and Valtteri Bottas are 3 of the 4 drivers in the current grid who have won in Melbourne. Who is the 4th? I don't think Max. So it's Max, Fernando Alonso, Sergio Perez, Kevin Magnussen. I don't think Max has won here. I don't think Kevin Magnussen's ever won a race. So Alonso or Perez? Just statistically, I'm gonna guess Alonso. Oh, let's go. 9 for 9. We got a chance to do something that's never been done on this podcast here, folks. Trying to go 10 for 10 on the weekly F1 quiz. Here we go. Jenson Button finished 18th on his NASCAR debut last weekend, but what physical ailment did the 2009 F1 world champion suffer while racing? Oh, I know this one. Dehydration, heat exhaustion, headaches, or muscle tension? Heat exhaustion. That's 10 for 10. That's perfect. Not a big deal. 10 for 10. Spraying the champagne. I do know wheel. Beat that, Adrian. All right, moving on. Good segue here. We got, speaking of Adrian Newey. Reports have come out. I'm not exactly sure where it originated, but it's been kind of all over the place that Mr. Newey's contract is set to expire in this relatively near future with Red Bull. So that's, just hearing that, my mind starts racing, thinking of the bidding war that could potentially happen between, if let's say he wants to leave Red Bull, just between Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, Aston Martin. I mean, the bidding war would be insane. And can't help but think if he joined Mercedes, that they could really turn things around pretty quickly with Newey's understanding of the new regulations and all that stuff. So, a man can dream, but then I saw this tweet in reply to the report, as per Tom, there's where it came from. As per Tom Clarkson, Adrian Newey's contract with Red Bull will expire soon. And then this was the reply. Mid-2014, Ferrari offered Adrian Newey a works engine, design a Ferrari road car, which apparently is his dream, an enormous amount of money, basically everything he could ever want, and he turned it down. So realistically, he's not going anywhere. He's been with Red Bull for so long. I think he has stake in one of Red Bull's, some sort of Red Bull affiliated company or something of that nature. So yeah, realistically not leaving, but a man can dream, and a man can dream that he would leave for Mercedes and turn things around, and Lewis wins his 8th and goes off into the sunset. As I said, a man can dream. But not likely. Well, not likely. Let's be honest here, not likely. In fact, this getting out, this news being spread, I think may kind of force Red Bull's hand a little bit to just re-sign him. For all we know, he is re-signed in a under the table, or not under the table, but behind closed doors type deal. Much like Checo's contract was done before Monaco last year. We only found that out because Checo said, I signed too early. And then he went and cheated on his wife that weekend. Funny stuff. Yeah, Red Bull sucks. So, yeah. That's like about all I have to say on Adrian Newey. A man can dream. Come over to Mercedes. Come on. We need you. It's got to be tiring working with the likes of Horner, Helmut Marko. Not so much Max Verstappen, but Jos Verstappen. Ooh. Imagine being around that guy all the time. Yikes. So, yeah, that's that. Moving on. I saw an interesting thing, actually, because sponsorships and money and all this new influx of fans, I don't know if it's changed the sport, but it's definitely enhanced, or there's a lot more influx of money coming in, a lot more opportunities to get that money. And I saw a little graphic. Maybe I can send it to Adrian. He can put it in the video. It's a number of sponsors that each F1 team has. And it's quite surprising. So I'm going to go bottom to top. Number 10 is HOS with 14. Not the most surprising, especially because they had a lot of Russian ties that they had to get rid of with Mazepin and Uralkali or whatever that was called, and all of the Russian war stuff, which I'm not really going to go into. But yeah, so they're last. Second last is AlphaTauri with 17. I guess like they're basically a junior team for Red Bull, so Red Bull gets the big sponsors. And I don't know how many countries or whatnot AlphaTauri is kind of like a relevant brand. Like I don't really even know what AlphaTauri is. All I know is some sort of fashion conglomerate of sorts. Again, could be wrong. Don't really know what I'm talking about there. Next up is Williams at 22. And then fourth last, Mercedes, 27. Very surprising they don't have more sponsors, but I guess their sponsors probably command quite a hefty paycheck for each. Quite a hefty bill for each sponsor. Then Aston Martin in fifth. So 1, 2, 3, 6 overall. I don't know. Next up, Aston Martin with 28, so one more than Mercedes. Again, kind of surprising considering, they had Vettel, now they have Alonso. Obviously, they're doing well, which was surprising to a lot of people, but just sort of like the Aston Martin brand, Lawrence Stroll running it, kind of figured they'd have a little bit more, especially because Alpine has 31 ahead of them. Then we have, Ferrari and Red Bull tied for third with 36. And then the top two, surprising. Number 2 is Alfa Romeo with 45 sponsors. So 9 more than Red Bull and Ferrari, almost 20 more than Mercedes. And at the very top, arguably the worst car on the grid this year, McLaren. The tractor has 47 sponsors. So they're still raking in the money, not doing very well on track, but off track, looks like they're doing pretty good. So yeah, 47 for McLaren, 36 for Red Bull and Ferrari, 27 for Mercedes. I just thought that was interesting. You'd think it would be a little bit more based on how the teams actually did, but that doesn't really factor in how much money each sponsorship is bringing in. But yeah, still interesting. There's a little bit of a debate going on in terms of, I'm not exactly sure where, okay, I do know where it started. So Stefano Domenicali, the F1 CEO, he was in attendance at, I'm just trying to find at the MotoGP opening race, I think, in Portugal. And he said something along the lines of that he'd be in favor of getting rid of practice sessions in F1. And people have run with it and jumped into their own conclusions. But I think basically what people are gathering is that he's saying not just that it's going to go straight into quali and or sprint race or whatever, but that there could be format changes, the kind that would perhaps strip back the number of practice sessions we have and replace them with something more exciting like sprint races. But in F2 and F3, they have one practice session on Friday, followed by a qualifying session on the same day. And on Saturday, they have a sprint race with a starting grid that's determined by reversing the top 10 finishers of the Friday's qualifying session. And then Sunday, of course, is the feature race. So yeah, Friday, practice session, then quali. Saturday, they have a sprint race with a reverse grid. And then Sunday is the race. So, that might be a bit more interesting way to set up the weekend. I don't know how the reverse grid races would fly in F1, but it'd be fun to see. I guess it would just be more cars for Max to pass. But it'd certainly be interesting. So, I don't know. This is sort of one of those things called wildfire. It's a talking point now to the point where they've asked a bunch of F1 drivers what they think about it. Excuse me. I'll give you their quick quotes on whether they felt 3 practice sessions were needed. George Russell said, no is the answer. Obviously, the more practice you do, the more up to speed you'll be, the more comfortable you'll be with the car. So no practices would be too little. I wasn't in favor of sprint races initially, but having done 6 in 2 years, I really enjoy the sprint races. Having action on a Friday is vital for all of us and for the entertainment factor. Pierre Gasly seemed to agree, stating that 3 is not needed, but 2 would most likely be the maximum he feels he'd need over the weekend. He continued, sprint races, there's different feedback. There's a lot of discussion on what to explore and how to increase the entertainment. It's always good to question what we're doing and look at how we can improve the whole format of the weekend. Then Lando Norris stated, it's not something I've necessarily thought of, to be honest with you. If you look at this in a simple way, practice is never going to be as interesting as qualifying and the race, but I don't know what else you would do necessarily. Fair point. And then they asked rookie Logan Sargent how he feels, and you'd think you'd be all in favor of the more practice the better because he's a rookie. He said 3 is definitely a lot, especially coming from F2 where you just have to take a risk a lot sooner than I currently have to because they only have 1 practice session. And then he continued, as a rookie, I don't mind having 2 or 3, but going forward, I don't think 3 is necessary. So this actually, it started as kind of what Stefano maybe thought was a bit of a throwaway quote, has really kind of picked up steam and seems like might actually, going forward in the future, be something they might tweak a little bit. I personally like 3 practice sessions. It really gets you into the flow of the weekend and the track and kind of gives you a feel for where your team's car stands. And obviously it's very good for the engineers. I also understand the drivers saying they don't really need all that time because they know these tracks so well. But I don't know, it's definitely something interesting that we're going to be following. They seem to be making a lot of changes, which some people don't like, but I'm all in favor of moving forward with things instead of going backwards. And I say that because, pardon me, dun, 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 dun. Michael Massey. Just when you think you're out, they pull you back in. Michael Massey has returned to the paddock in Australia this week for the F1 race. I don't know on what terms. I couldn't care to look into it because I didn't want to get upset. But have to imagine there's some interesting conversations going on with Mr. Massey. Whether he runs into Toto Wolff or Lewis Hamilton, I don't know. Lewis said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said something along the lines of he's not going to talk to him. He has no reason to talk to him. He's just going to focus on, his car and improving. It would be interesting to have maybe Netflix will get a meeting between Toto and Michael. But realistically, we're going to see Christian Horner giving a big hug and handshake and so funny what you did. So yeah, I'm not looking forward to seeing any shots of that. It's just this thing won't go away. It's going to be etched. 2021 Abu Dhabi is just going to be etched in our collective brains for as long as we watch F1. And I just got to come to terms with that as much as it is disappointing. Yeah, Mr. Massey will not go away. He's back. Better not show him once. I don't know. They admitted that they made a mistake. He made a mistake, and that's why they let him go. So a bit strange to, roll out the red carpet to welcome him back. If he wanted to come back as a fan or whatever, sure. But it seems like it's they're making a bit of like a, oh, look who's back kind of thing where he can go fuck himself for all I care. Another guy that can go fuck himself. I say that with truth because I wanted to like this guy, but I just can't. His name is George Russell, and he drives the Mercedes F1 car as teammate with Lewis Hamilton. And after the last race, Lewis said that George had the better setup, and that's why he did so well. And it was a bit lucky that this happened. A lot of people take these quotes as kind of being a little bratty and catty from Lewis, and fair. It was probably not his best moment. I'll admit that. Kind of didn't need to say it. Now he clarified, but also George had to chime back with some interesting comments. He said, "I don't think there's any luck in it at all," Russell told the media. "I think it's down to the preparation you put in before the event. The changes we made overnight, I knew that was going to be the right direction with the work we did with the team, and I believed it was going to be better than the setup that Lewis opted for. I think everybody's got different preferences. I was happy with the direction I took and the work I'm doing with the engineers. Lewis clarified his statement a little bit by saying, I think people probably from my choice of words at the weekend, I want to reiterate how great of a job George did on the weekend. I think the thing I was commenting on, I mean, you can tell he's kind of tripping over his words there, as I am. I think the thing I was commenting on is that there's one specific thing that you can change in the suspension that you have to do over Friday night. And when you make that change, once you start pre-practice 3, you can't change it for the rest of the weekend. So when you make that change, you're basically rolling the dice. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I've done it in the past. Sometimes it hasn't worked, sometimes it has. And it worked great for George, and he did a great job. The thing I was lacking in the race was a lot of front end, which that setup gives you. In hindsight, that would have been great. We took lots of learnings from it. I think race pace was quite decent, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I mean, clarifying his statements. I'm obviously biased towards Lewis. I think it was a good clarification to kind of point out what he meant by it. He wasn't necessarily saying like, oh, George just got lucky. He's saying like he rolled the dice and it happened to work out this time. Lewis went maybe with a more conservative setup and it didn't work as well as George's, but that's kind of what happens. So, yeah, not really a fan of George's quote because it kind of comes across when he says like, I think it's down to the preparation you put in before the event. Like that's a clear implication or inferring that Lewis didn't put in the work before the event, which I don't think anyone has ever said that Lewis doesn't work hard or that he doesn't put the work in or that he doesn't care. So, I mean, people have said that, but not people with an objective look at things. I mean, something is definitely going on with Lewis. He doesn't seem to be all himself right now, but kind of a low blow to just infer that Lewis wasn't putting in the work and that, you know, he did it. He knew to make that move because he's putting in so much more work. So, yeah, a little disappointing, but I don't know. Those two, they could go either way right now. Those two could develop quickly into a bit of a rivalry like Rosberg situation, or they could start, you know, doing well and helping each other out, and it could be a nice cheery bunch of Brits just driving their old Mercedes. So we'll see how that pans out, but I don't know. Not certainly not a fan of George at the moment. Hoping Lewis can do better than him this weekend, but we'll see. Before I get into the Aussie GP, there was one thing that crossed my desk this week that I kind of did a double take on. A self-driving championship in super formula cars is on its way. The Abu Dhabi Autonomous Racing League, established by Aspire, has announced that next year they will launch the biggest autonomous racing league ever. Not only that, but they will exclusively feature the Dallara Super Formula cars, the fastest in the world outside of Formula One. The league's primary goal is to push the boundaries of autonomous mobility by hosting challenges to advance R&D in autonomous racing and artificial intelligence. So, Abu Dhabi Autonomous Racing League, the world's largest autonomous vehicle racing league, set to take place at the iconic Yas Marina circuit in 2024, so Abu Dhabi. The race will feature multiple unmanned Dallara Group Super Formula cars going head-to-head at top speeds of 310 kilometers per hour, and the viewers will be invited to follow along through live updates from augmented reality and virtual reality infographics and real-time displays shown on screen. So basically it's a robot race. There's gonna be people like controlling it. I'm not entirely sure how this works, but kind of interesting. I don't know if I don't know. Then it's truly just the car, or if it's just like a guy, how good the guy does, almost like a video game. I don't know if they're just like programmed to the track, what the case may be. I guess we'll see as that happens, but yeah, caught my eye. Kind of interesting. I mean, a lot of the enjoyment of watching is like the drivers and the human aspect of it. So I don't know, but I'll definitely tune in. Yeah, a bit strange. Oh, I've got a sneeze coming. Try to get away from the mic on that one, but apologies if I didn't. Just do a little check here. We're good. Okay, on to the main event. The Australian Grand Prix. So last year we had I I wouldn't say it was a great race. What I remember from it mainly was Sainz was kind of in some heat going into the race in terms of his performance, and then he spun out on the first lap, if I remember correctly. But looking back now, Charles Leclerc won by 20 seconds, so a bit of a runaway. Sergio Perez second, George Russell third, Lewis Hamilton fourth, Lando Norris fifth, Danny Ricciardo sixth. Interesting. Danny did pretty well here. Let's see. The DNFs were Max Verstappen, Sebastian Vettel, and Carlos Sainz. And yeah, Sainz was on lap 1. Max Verstappen, lap 38. So yeah, this is one of the tracks that Max hasn't won on. But yeah, that was last year. Let's talk this year. Okay, so the 2023 Australian Grand Prix, the times. Okay, pull this up here. Yeah, always interesting when it's like for us, Eastern Standard Time Zone. The race is at 1 a.m., but it's daytime there. It's always a little weird staying up. I don't mind staying up. I'm kind of a night owl, anyways. But it's always just weird seeing the sunlight over there. Well, it's pitch black middle of the night here. So anyways, practice 1 is tonight. So technically Thursday evening going into Friday morning. 11:30. Yeah, I guess 9:30? 21:30 to 22:30. So 9:30 to 10:30? Sounds about right. Practice 2, March 31st, 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. Practice 3, March 31st, 21:30 to 22:30. So I'm guessing, again, that's 9:30 to 10:30. Yikes, not a math guy. Qualifying 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. on Saturday, so Friday night into Saturday morning, and then the race is Saturday night, technically Sunday morning at 1 a.m. So all the main stuff happening at 1 a.m. That's all you need to know from my jumbling of all those times there. That's the times. I think it's the first time we've ever had 4 DRS zones. I think they kind of went back and forth with it last year, but they removed one of them at the last moment, just before the race, or maybe before the practice sessions. But yeah, this year, 4 DRS zones. So that's going to be interesting, guys. Going to be flying around. Not my favorite track to play in the game, but it is like a track that's been around for a while. And yeah, I mean, I don't think it has the reputation of being necessarily bad racing. So yeah, we'll see. Its first Grand Prix was 1996. It is a 58-lap race, 5.278 kilometers circuit length, lap record 1 minute 20 seconds. Charles Leclerc 2022. What's the circuit like? As a temporary facility, Albert Park can be quite bumpy, though resurfacing for 2022 will no doubt improve matters. While the circuit at the start of the weekend is often slippery, rubbering in as the sessions progress. It's kind of weirdly worded. It's also a circuit that requires a well-sorted chassis, with several spots on the track where the drivers require a reactive front end to allow them to chuck it into a corner. Melbourne is also one of the faster tracks on the calendar, with Lewis Hamilton's 2019 pole lap set at an average of over 235 kilometers an hour. Yeah, so that is that in terms of the schedule. In terms of how I think the race is going to go, I mean, at this point, it's kind of obvious that like the Red Bull is just so far ahead, and the Aston Martin is certainly the second car, and then it seems Ferrari, and then Mercedes. But there's a little bit of gray area between Aston Martin, Ferrari, Mercedes for some movement. And if Ferrari's bringing a little bit of upgrades this week, I think Aston Martin alluded to upgrades. I'm not entirely sure. Mercedes has some stuff in the works that they say they're progressing on well, but they always kind of say that. So we'll see. I don't think there's going to be much changes right now. We have a long wait after this race, so maybe not Baku. I think Mercedes is bringing upgrades to Imola. And even Toto said they're 6 months to a year behind Red Bull, so I'm not expecting much until at least the summer break. But even that, kind of got to quell our expectations right now as a Lewis and a Mercedes fan, which is strange that I dislike George so much, but hey, it's the name of the game when you're going to go after my boy Lewis. So my podium predictions for this week, as I said, not really going to go out on much of a limb here, but podium, Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, Fernando Alonso. Again, not on a limb, but that's what it's going to be for me. My bets I'm going to make this week, I hit 7-1 on Perez to win last week. That was a lot, obviously, thanks to Max. His qualifying errors, but I was going to bet on Max before the race to win, thinking it would be like 4 or 5-1 since he was starting, 15th? But it was he was like just behind Checo in odds. It was still like 2.3 to 1 or something, which is nuts for a guy starting from 15th. So, yeah, made a little money on Checo. So we're going back to the well. Bobby Big Wheels. Quali, and again, not much money to be made on Max. So I'm not even going to bother betting on Max except for one thing. So if you want to just make a little bit of money, probably safest bet is just to bet on Max for everything. But wanted to kind of get a better return on our investment here. So qualifying, I'm going to bet on Checo to take pole again at 4.33 to 1. So $100 pays out 430. Alonso to take pole at 9 to 1. I don't expect this to happen, but at those odds, he's third or fourth most likely, maybe after, it would go Max, Checo, maybe Charles, maybe Alonso. So who knows? Anything can happen. The race, I'm also going to put a little bit of money on Perez to win at 5 to 1. The Rebel team is talking a lot about reliability issues. Now, I don't know. I assume that's kind of sandbagging just to keep the powers at B to stop any sort of putting in any sort of restrictions because they're just ahead by so much. So I think they're kind of alluding to, yes, we're fast, but we have a lot of reliability issues and may not finish the race. So we'll see if that's just, anything can happen. So yeah, if Max doesn't win, Checo's probably the most likely guy behind that. So I bet he's 5 to 1. So I'll put a little bit of money on that. The one bet I'm going to make on Max is, I think it's called the Grand Slam. I don't know what it's called in different places, but here it's called the Grand Slam. And at least in my mind. So Max Verstappen to get pole, fastest lap, and win the race, 3.6 to 1. So not bad. I think the hardest thing in there, like I definitely can see him getting pole. I definitely can see him winning, obviously. Fastest lap is a bit of a tricky one because someone could just on their last lap go for it, or if someone wants to take a point away, or if Checo wants to do what Max did to him last race, and get it on the last lap. That could be where we get tripped up. But at 3.6 to 1 on Max Verstappen, I'll take that. And then still deciding my one last bet. I got to see how they do in practice sessions, but both drivers from the team to finish top 6. Mercedes is 1.72 paying out, and Aston Martin is 1.83. So, do I have, if we think, Max, Checo, Charles Leclerc, Fernando Alonso, that's 4 that are probably going to be in the top 4, barring any DNFs. And then, so who's most likely to finish the other 2 spots? 5, 6 is more likely that Lance Stroll gets one of those spots, or George and Lewis get those spots. That's the decision I'm going to have to make. But those are my bets at the moment for the Australian Grand Prix. Don't really have too much this week because Adrian is not here. So it's kind of hard to just, yammer on by yourself. Not hard, but can't be as interesting. So I'm not going to hold up your ear holes any longer. I'm just going to looking up one last thing because I want to see when is Baku, April 28th to 30th. So after this, we've basically got a whole month off. Unfortunately, I think the China race was supposed to be in between these, but it obviously is canceled. So yeah, big break coming up after this, but that's what it is. We're going to got a bracket I'm working on, to kind of fill the time, maybe best F1 drivers of all time or something. So we'll put that out on the socials as we get to it. But yeah, definitely looking forward to this week. Should be fun to see Danny a little bit. It's a home race for Oscar Piastri. Night race for us, 1 a.m. I like that personally. Looking forward to it. I'm curious what Adrian thinks is going to happen. Most likely, yes, it's going to be another Red Bull runaway. But hey, you never know. A man can dream, as I said earlier. Just like I can dream about Adrian Newey coming to Mercedes, I can dream about Lewis maybe getting a podium. Who knows? Something crazy happens with a safety car. He gets a win. A man can dream. Top 5 at least would be nice. Beat George, even better. Let's see what happens. Still we rise. Thank you, everybody, for watching, listening, however you consume this. Adrian will most certainly be back with me next week. And yeah, maybe he's going to put his own little 5-minute piece in here. So yeah, thanks for listening to episode 52 of the HOS F1 podcast. I'm Arjun McCullough. Talk to you next week. Go Lewis.